Okay, so bringing the inner child to Growups Playground. We have a guest here, by the way, with us. It's the giraffe, and I'll speak of the giraffe in a little while. So, for most of us who have had and have led difficult childhoods, difficult in a way where we've had to parent ourselves in the best that we knew then, where a lot of our emotional needs, our physical needs have not been met, where we've found ourselves in places which have felt unsafe, whether those are our bodies or our homes or our schools, the different circumstances which lead to these feelings, but we've had those feelings. Another thing about the inner child is that when we speak of difficult feelings and the fact that our emotional needs and our physical needs have not been met, it doesn't mean necessarily that we've been through traumatic events. But the emotional needs not having been met does not mean you've been traumatized. It's just that there is some essential basics that a child needs, and if those essential basics, the need to be seen, the need to be heard, the need to not prove their worth, the need to not earn their love from their parents, from their siblings, from their teachers, the need to be seen in their awesomeness and being supported in their uniqueness and being not isolated when they don't fit in. All of these are very valid emotional needs, and most of us have not had those met. And as we grow up, then we grow up to be individuals who are constantly looking on the outside for that kind of validation in our relationships, in our workspaces, in our relationships, where we want to be seen without speaking, where we want to be heard even when we're not saying the words that we really want to say. And the constant question, the underlying question that we keep asking our partners or from our parents or from our close family members is, do you not see, like that's the underlying question, although we're not saying it, but do you not see the heart of who I am? Do you not hear the words that I'm not saying? Which is, of course, an unfair space to be in for the other person, because we're looking for validation for our unmet emotional needs, which were not met when we were children, from grown-ups on the outside, and they can't do it. Even when we begin to speak the words, they can't do it. An unhealthy inner child also comes to life as one which is in dysfunctional relationships, in either relationships with anxious attachment, where they need to be constantly validated in their relationship, where they get anxious when they're far apart, when a text has not been answered, or they're constantly on the lookout for their partner's change in moods, or as parents change in moods. So they constantly want to be reassured. And their love to be reaffirmed by the people that they love, and that's anxious attachment. And the other style of relationships which unhealthy inner people or grown-ups with unhealthy inner children get into are anxious detachment, or avoidant detachment, because what they do then is they run away, and instead of talking about their feelings, and instead of putting their emotions out there, they tend not to talk about it and just become very, very quiet. Those are mostly good children. And the second style is avoidant or detachment, where those with unhealthy inner children begin to detach themselves from the relationships. So they are in a relationship, or with their partners, with their parents, with their close loved ones, with their friends, but they don't engage emotionally. They tend not to voice their feelings. They tend to hide. They tend to become more quiet. So both of these styles, whether it's anxious attachment or avoidant detachment, both of these are reflective of the emotional needs which were not met. So what does it mean then to bring our inner child to Growups Playground? We're not doing it with an audience in mind. We're doing it for us. And there are a few steps to it. And in my point of view and my own learning as well, because I've had to parent my inner child. I'm still parenting my inner child as of yesterday. I still have been. So the first one is that we need to recognize, for us to recognize and be aware of the fact that there is a child inside of us that I will now need to parent. I will now need to parent the younger self that I have within me. and I will need to parent them in the way that I was not parented. So I will, and what I do with it, with my inner child, is that I tune in to my heart space, and I recall my picture of when I was, say, 5 or 6 years old. I carry that picture on my phone as well. I have it as a constant reminder of this little girl who's inside me. The other tip also is to paste that picture on your bathroom mirror, because that's how we usually begin our mornings. So I have that girl in front of me, and there are the two parts to it. The first part is I want that girl, and I began my journey by asking that girl, little Madiha, to speak to me of what she was feeling, what she had been feeling, where she had been asked to remain quiet, where she'd been shut down, where she'd not felt seen and she had not felt heard. And you just listen to the story, because there's a lot of subconscious and even unconscious memories that we would not have had until we begin to have that conversation with our inner child. And as she begins to speak and tells me of what she'd been feeling, I begin to recall the instances and the moments where she first began to feel that way. So almost like tracing this back to the scene of the crime. So one part of it is listening to the inner child, and the other part of it is, as you listen to the inner child, because what I'm doing here is I'm parenting her. So as I listen to her, to my little Madiha, there is no judgment. There is no want to change her point of view. Not ifs and no ifs or buts or, oh, did you see it from that perspective? No, just listen and validate. So mostly when she's telling me her story, which is basically me remembering, I'm saying, yes, you're right. I understand. I understand. Oh, wow, really? I understand. And when things get emotional, which they will, because this is your childhood and this is your foundation, this is your beginning, where you were not given what you deserved, you begin then to tell her that, do you know, and that's the second part of it, how we begin to parent, do you know that you are loved? And do you know that you are adored? Do you know that you are seen? I see you. I hear you. I love you. I love the person that you are. I love the beautiful girl that you are. Look at your beautiful hands. Oh my God, look at your beautiful heart. Look at how it's shining. I love how you speak. I love how your eyes sparkle. I love how you squint against the sun. Say these words to your own inner child as often as possible. That's one part. And the second part is, as we, in our grown-up bodies, as we push ourselves into the day with our grown-up selves, how do we take our inner child with us? There are two different ways of doing that. The first one is we're very critical of ourselves as grown-ups. We're very hard on ourselves as grown-ups. We have an inner critic that's raging and very well fed and very well voiced with strong opinions about what you should do and should not do, and where you have failed and where you have faltered and where you have not faltered. So there's a lot of like that inner critic is quite strong. So as we begin to have those inner conversations in our day, whether we're working or at home, in reaction to what people are saying, in reaction to moments, begin to watch the inner conversations that we have with ourselves. Oh, Madiha, you should not have said that in that meeting. Didn't that make you sound so stupid? That's where I stop myself and say, wait a minute. When I'm saying, oh, didn't that make you sound so stupid? I'm actually saying that, and I pull the image of my 6-year-old self in my, and it's like I'm saying that to this little girl. And when I change my inwards, when I change the person that I'm saying it to, from the grown-up Madiha who can handle anything to a 6-year-old Madiha who I'm saying, my God, how stupid was that? Would you say that to a 6-year-old girl who's standing there innocent and completely actually feeling quite trapped in her stupidity that you're imposing on her? Would you say that to a 6-year-old? No, you would not say, oh my God, Madiha, that was so stupid of you. Say, Madiha, first of all, everything is okay. Second of all, you are super smart and you're very intelligent and you're loved. And third of all, there's nothing. Move on. There wouldn't be that conversation that we begin to have ourselves with ourselves inside. That we would not have that conversation if we were having it with a 6 year old. So watch the inner critic as it flares up in everyday moments. And I'm just giving you one example in a work moment, but similarly with relationships. When we hear people voicing out their opinions of us, and we turn that into our opinions, their opinions about ourselves, and we judge ourselves very harshly. Or when we make mistakes and we know that we've messed up, and the way we hold ourselves so deeply accountable at such a harsh level with very little sense of forgiveness in all of those moments, instead of when we having those inner conversations, if instead of believing or thinking that, oh, this is a grown-up self and who can handle this, and oh my god, in any case you've messed up a million times in your life, and here's another speech for you to tell you exactly how many times you messed up. Instead of that approach, if we can say, oh, okay, I'm actually having a conversation with my 6-year-old self, and what is the thing that 6-year-old self most needs to hear, and you will see that the more conversations you have within yourselves to your 6-year-old self, the less your outside circumstances will trigger you into being your own critic. That inner critic will begin to die down little by little, because you are prioritizing the inner child that you are and not paying a lot of heed to the grown-up self who you have come to believe can handle anything. So those are the two aspects. For me, my closest understanding of what that inner child feels like, because we are energies, because before actions there are feelings, and because each feeling is a vibration, and because a constant movement, constant vibration creates a frequency. So I like to understand these concepts more as frequencies, as feelings first. So what does the inner child feel like? And the more we tune into the feeling of the inner child, the easier it is for us to translate that in form of actions on the outward. So for me, the feeling of the inner child is one, a sense of wonder. That for me is very strong. I imagine and I visualize my little Madhya as like eyes wide open, looking out into the world every morning as she wakes up. What is this day going to bring today? What am I going to be experiencing today? What adventure will I be having today? How many different adventures will I be having before my first cup of chai? So the sense of wonder that you then bring to your work. How is today's meeting going to turn out? Or what is this interaction? Because the word boring in a true inner child space does not exist. So this meeting that you don't want to be in, what does this meeting have to give to me that I'm not seeing? I wonder. Or how do you bring that to relationships? I wonder how I can show up differently today, or I wonder how my partner will show up differently today. So just this energy of wonder changes the expectation within relationships and changes the energy within relationships and within moments. So one for me is a sense of wonder, and the other one is a sense of innocence. And the sense of innocence is not stupidity, but a sense of innocence is has a frequency of faith and a frequency of trust, more than faith, frequency of trust in it. I trust that this morning in which I have woken up has the power to carry me through. I trust that in this moment that I find myself in, there's got to be something good in this for me. That's not naivety, that's innocence. The sense of innocence that helps you navigate through difficult moments in your life. I wonder what this moment has to offer to me, because I do trust the fact there's something good in this for me. So the sense of wonder, there's a sense of innocence, and a purity of heart, which is a big word, but for me that translates very simply into when I look at another soul who's having a human experience, so when I look at another human being, I'm going to try my best as much as I can to look at them through the eyes of God, which are the eyes of love. So instead of, and there's so many filters of judgment that we have as women as well, because we have our protective energy fields around us, especially when it comes to men. So instead of looking at people through eyes of judgment, looking at men through eyes of judgment, looking at strangers through eyes of judgment. Oh, I don't know whether I can trust them or not. Oh, I don't know what kind of person they are. Oh, look what clothes they're wearing. I wonder what. No, look at all of them, if we can, through purity of heart, which means to the eyes of God, as God would look at them. Now, that of course is an elevated experience, and God knows I don't know how to do that, even a little bit of it. But I love the feeling of knowing what it feels like, and I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like. We can practice doing that on our children. Because that's where it comes naturally, or on people that we love a lot. That's where it comes naturally. It's practicing looking at them through the eyes of God. And then little by little, and it is little by little, transferring that on the rest of the world, looking at the rest of the world through the eyes of God, sense of innocence, where there's nothing bad that's going to happen to me. They're not going to take anything away from me. I don't have to fight for anything, and I don't have to snatch anything away from anybody. There is just plenty for everybody. It's wonderful. I trust that this place has everything that I'll ever need right now in this moment. And I trust myself to step into this moment with a sense of, with a purity of heart, knowing that no matter what, I am beautifully protected. I am beautifully taken care of. And there's abundant sustenance for me everywhere, in every way. Not sustenance just from a physical nourishment perspective, but sustenance, one that feeds my soul, feeds my heart. So that for me, the sense of wonder, the innocence, and a purity of heart is the frequency of the inner child. I first came into contact with this inner child space. How do you do that, right? How do you bring it more often to life? So I first came into contact with understanding how we do that more often through a children's book. And it's called Giraffes Can't Dance, which is why we have I hope we can see it, I don't know. There's this unexpected friend that we have, I don't know, it's a giraffe, okay? And this Giraffes Can't Dance is a book that I would read to my daughter when she was little. And it's this fantastic book, which is about a giraffe who goes to a jungle party where all the animals is big, like a gigantic dance competition, and all the animals have shown up and they know their moves. They're tangoing and they're like salsaing and rock and rolling. And this giraffe with his skinny legs and this long neck does not know how to dance. He's falling over, he's tripping over, everybody's laughing at him, and so he goes away. He leaves that dance party and goes away on his own, and he hears a cricket sing. And as the cricket begins to sing, and it's an unusual song, right? A cricket song. It's not a normal kind of melody. But as the cricket, no other music had inspired that giraffe, but as the cricket begins to sing, the giraffe finds, his name is Gerald, so the giraffe finds his legs, they start to move, and he starts to move, and he starts to move in these really beautiful rhythm that comes naturally to him, supporting his long legs and the long neck. The rhythm comes naturally to him. The body moves more naturally to the cricket song rhythm. And the animals come here because they begin to surround him, and they're in awe of how fantastically different Gerald's dance is. And they ask them to, it's like, oh my God, where did you learn that dance? And I love this line that Gerald says in the end. It's like, we all can dance if we find the music that we love. So how do we bring the inner child to the Growups Playground? By doing more things that we love, and doing them more often, and doing them not for applause, not for validation, not for somebody praising you, but doing them because they feel good. doing stuff from your heart, growing things from your heart because it feels good and it's uniquely you. I first began to reclaim my inner child when I picked up my diary and my pen and began to write poetry. And it was poetry that will never win any prizes or any competitions. At that time, I did not have a plan for it to be on any blog. I was just writing poetry, and the sheer act of creating that space at midnight after my daughter would sleep, lighting a candle, picking up a pen, and writing words which I've not read anywhere before are so uniquely me. That was the first step in me reclaiming my inner child. Then distancing myself more from social engagements which were not benefiting me, where I was showing up because I felt like I had to do it either for corporate networking or for social networking. I distanced myself from that place, and I honored my needs enough to know that I don't want to show up in places where I'm looking only to fit in. I want to show up in places, and only those places which feed my soul. And I realized that the place that fed my soul the most was solitude. So I distanced myself. I didn't have a lot of friends at that time, and even now I don't have big circles. So I distanced myself because I chose to do right by me. And then I chose to have dreams. And that's how you begin to do right by your inner child, as you begin to parent that inner child back to life. Then the third thing was I began to dream of things which were impossible and impractical for grown-ups. I began to dream of those things, and I did them. They did materialize for me, and I did them successfully because I was dreaming that dream not to get something, but for the pleasure of an adventure, for the pleasure of an experience, which made sense to me. So more and more, as we begin to reclaim our inner child and we begin to show up as authentically ourselves, which I do, by the way, which means that when you are in a meeting and you've said something that you really like, something, you've solved a problem or you've seen an insight that you hadn't seen before, and there are 5 other people sitting there, no matter what the hierarchy in that meeting, I do this. I said, pause. It's like, oh my God. It's like, guys, I need a moment to myself. Everybody who works with me knows this. Guys, I need to have a moment for myself. And so it's like, Madiha, what a fantastic thing. I love that you thought of that. I love how amazing that is. I'm super excited about it, and I'm very well done. So I pat myself. I hug myself. I say, very well done. I give in a meeting. So I'm bringing my inner child to the grown-up playground, and I am validating my own self and when I do that, when I validate my own self in all the little accomplishments that make me feel good, then I'm never going to wait for validation from others. I'm not going to ask for that praise and those breadcrumbs from others, because I am nourishing myself in this particular space myself. So I do that. And if it means that when you feel really excited, I get up and start clapping because it feels good. And the beautiful thing about this is, you may think as I'm talking about it that it feels weird, it must look weird. A couple of times, yes, but the third time the energy is contagious in that room. I'm not saying other people are going to stand up and start clapping, but there's a sense of lightness. Again, no matter what the hierarchy, there's a sense of lightness of everybody else connecting with the frequency of the inner child that comes in. Everybody relaxes a little bit more. Everybody opens up a little bit more, which is the frequency of the inner child. It's an open frequency. It's an inviting frequency. It's an explorative frequency. It is a receiving frequency. Because you're not doing things to get things. You're doing things because it feels right. For you. It feels good here in your heart. And that's such a pure way. Such a pure way of doing things, such a pure way of expressing yourself. Being the inner child or bringing your inner child to the grown-up playground also means that, for me, it means this podcast. For me, it means showing up and talking about what feels good with a camera in a space, in an empty room, and uploading it and having no people to watch it, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I love talking about this because it means something to me. I look forward to my Tuesdays or Wednesday recording sessions. I have my cup of coffee, I ask my friend, who is this amazing person in the office, like, help out, set up the camera and the mic. I dress differently, a little bit more differently. I put on some earrings, whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, it's my podcast today. I feel good. I'm doing it for me, for nobody else, but for me. So all of these things that we begin to do for me, none of these, but all of these are experiences. All of these are moments. They're not things related. So that's the other thing. Inner child does not mean that we've got to buy things and go places and spend a lot. It can mean that if you wanted to, but it really doesn't, because those are symptomatic of other underlying challenges that we may have and we may not be ready to look at. But inner child is all about experiences. It's all about feeling this feeling of richness, and of feeling abundant, and of feeling nourished, and of feeling excited. And and a lot of people comment on grown-ups who are in touch with their inner child. Where do you get this energy from? How are you excited about mundane things? Why do you not get bogged down when you have to work on a tagline the 4th time or the 5th time, or when you have to work on a concept the 5th time or the 6th time? Because every time, and I'll tell you why, because when you are connected with your inner child, it's not the 4th time or the 5th time or the 6th time. It is, what am I going to discover this time? Or what am I just going to discover today? There is no 5th. Nobody's keeping a track. Nobody's counting of how many times you have not succeeded. The inner child perspective or point of view in life is, what am I going to discover this time that I've not discovered before? Not what I've missed out on before. What problem have I missed out, or what have I not looked at? No, what am I going to discover this time that I haven't discovered before? And that's exciting, right? That's fun. Bringing your inner child to the grown-up playground also means that you remain true to your other feelings, the feelings which are not exciting. When you feel tired, sleep. When you feel hungry, eat. When you feel like your body is tensed up, go outside for a walk. When you feel like your head is spinning because you're stressed out with this particular project, take a break. Instantly respond to what your body is telling you. And the more practice that you get in honoring your body's needs and emotional needs, the stronger your connection with your inner child. Because see, look at the dynamics of what a child does when they want something. The child wants when they're in pain, they cry. As grown-ups, when you're in pain, cry. As children, when you are hungry, you will stop traffic, you will stop parties, because the child needs to be fed and the child needs their snacks. Do the same with your food. Feed yourself well. When the child wants to express an idea which excites them, they interrupt. Okay, they will, perhaps not the best example, but when they're excited about their idea, they will express it. They will not think about how silly it sounds and how impossible and what would others think. No, they will express their idea for the sheer satisfaction of expressing the idea. They'll do it. And that's the same energy that a grown-up can bring to the grown-up world when they have the inner child alive and kicking. They will speak of ideas in a brainstorming session, or at home when you're having a meaningful conversation with people that you love. You will speak it. You will speak what's in your heart. You will not agree for the sake of agreeing, and you will not agree for the sake of resolving an issue and moving on, because you know that turns into resentment and bitterness and then dis-ease and then other things. So they speak your heart. Do it with kindness. Do it with the energy of the inner child, which is that of wonder, a little of innocence, of purity of heart, as much as we can. But express your emotions authentically. Do not box them. Do not hide them. Do not pretend to be okay when you're not okay. That's a disconnection from our inner child, because then we're not validating our own emotions. And what we are teaching ourselves is some emotions are good and other emotions are bad. And by calling some emotions bad, we are suppressing them and getting them to turn into insomnia or migraines or panic attacks or whatever different forms that they'll end up taking, your, IBS, whatever. So honor your inner child by honoring your physical needs and your emotional needs. Honor your inner child by being authentic to your emotional and physical needs, and honor it when it's inconvenient to be honored. When there are difficult energies around you, when you're difficult moments, choose to honor your needs first, because that is the only way that we can show up in relationships, at work, in life authentically and constantly. If we do not prioritize our emotional needs, if we do not prioritize our inner child, we can fake our way into sustaining relationships and sustaining our careers and sustaining our life for a little amount of time, but they are not sustainable because they will crumble. They will crumble because when we don't prioritize ourselves, we cannot take care of another human being. When our inner child is not nourished, we cannot nourish another human being. When our cup is not full, we cannot give to another. So when we say, fill your own cup, what we're actually saying is nourish your inner child, honor it, spend time with it, love it, validate it, spend time with it, which is all you, and bring it with you when you're playing grown up, when you're playing your grown up role in the Growups Playground, and see how the dynamics of that playground change. And they will, because kindness begets kindness, innocence begets innocence. A sense of wonder is infectious. Purity of heart is contagious. Do it. Much love.